All right. Hello, everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. I just trying to get Bryce up here, and we've started streaming on a lot of platforms. So wherever you're joining us, we'll get started in just a second. Hey,
Hello,
Bryce. How
Joey.
are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
Wonderful. I am doing well. Jamie's head is on here, but Jamie might be listening, but I think he's driving at the moment. So he may pop in or pop out. So for now, it's going to be you and I. And we're streaming live on several different platforms. So no matter where you're watching, we're going to get started in just a minute. So hang tight, everybody, while everyone's jumping on.
Fantastic. Just give me one sec. I'm just going to close the window. There's a bit of traffic noise outside.
Yeah, go for it. Take your time. All right, everybody who's joining, we're going to get started in just a minute. We are so excited to have Bryce joining us. We'll give an introduction just a few minutes. All right. So Bryce, I'm going to make you a co-host, so that should allow you to share your screen. And see if I can troubleshoot the chat. I'm not great at the tech stuff and talking at the same time, just FYI.
It's okay. Let's go for the one that's more important right now.
Okay, I'm back. I had a visitor from a tiny, tiny person. Awesome. Yeah, I can see your screen. All right. We'll
Are
get
you seeing
started
it
in
in presentation mode?
yes, I am. Yeah, I can see it full
Fantastic.
screen, and our little heads for my view are on the right. So yes, I can. So okay, we're waiting. Are you in South Africa right now? Are you traveling?
Yes, in Johannesburg.
Ah, so fun. How's the weather?
Surprisingly, a little bit chilly today. And by chilly, I probably mean I think it's like mid 80s Fahrenheit. It's supposed to be summer at the moment, but these days the weather's all over the place. So you never know.
Well, I'm in Texas and it's fall, but it's 73. So it is fall for us because normally it's like, well, you were here when it was in the hundreds. And what was that? When was that? August?
Yeah, wow, that was a heat I haven't experienced before.
Oh, really? Yeah, it gets very hot, very hot. All right, we got a few more people joining, and then we have people joining on other platforms. I can see a lot of people logging on. So, yeah, thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to join. We're super excited to have Bryce on. And one of the cool things is those of you who know Matt, one of our coaches, one of our top coaches, Bryce is actually going to look at his brand live. So you'll have a live demo of a brand. And for those just joining, Bryce Cressy is in South Africa. We're so excited that he agreed to speak with us. He helps e-commerce sellers master global expansion. So when you are ready to take your brand to another country, Bryce is your go-to man. So we're very excited to have you here. I won't give your full introduction. I'll let you introduce yourself. Just one quick minute here. A lot of more people are logging on. I'm checking all the other platforms just really quickly. Anybody who is on the Zoom right now, if you just want to say hello and test out the chat and let us know where you're watching from. That's how I know if I set the chat up properly.
I'm sure it's all good.
Hey, we got Ben just joined. We have Chad. Hey, Paul. Raina. All right. All right. Paul, Chad, Ben, can one of you put something in the chat? Hold on. Let me fix it now. Okay, now try. There we go. Okay, that was my fault. Troubleshooted. Okay, perfect. So now the chat is working. And when you chat, if everybody could click everybody when you ask questions or give comments. Ooh, Ben, South Florida. That sounds warm too. Awesome. Hey, Chad. Okay, thank you. Glad we fixed all that. All right, so we are going to get started. I'm going to hand this over to Bryce, and he's going to give his introduction. And feel free to ask questions as we go. I'll keep my eyes on the chat on all the platforms, and then you can always raise your hands as well. All right, Bryce, kicking it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Joey. And a big, I guess, hello all the way from South Africa to the AMZ Insiders Society. I think, Joey, since we spoke and connected in Texas, I think it was just so noteworthy about the community that you guys are building. And at Z, we are very, very dedicated to seeing what we can do in terms of educating Amazon sellers with the various steps that they need to be taken when expanding into foreign countries, from a logistics, from a compliance, from a, even for instance, a product research perspective into that market. I think a lot of times, especially in the US, there's such a massive market in the US that sometimes it's not thought of to go and start trading into other markets, because why not? You're already doing pretty well in the US. But this is just to show that the US is the most competitive market. There are other markets that are untapped, that if you just follow the steps in a very simple way, it's going to be very easy to enter into those markets and kind of take some of that market share away. But as a start, my name is Bryce Tracy. I'm the head of partnerships and affiliates at Z. My entire role is dedicated to interacting, networking, and having good conversations with agencies, with societies, with service providers, with software aggregators, and different softwares all dedicated to helping e-commerce brands. And in that, naturally, I'm also one of the voices of Z when it comes to international expansion, to educating people on the best ways to start selling their product overseas. And since the chat with yourself, Joey, I think it was needed to possibly touch on international expansion, because it's such a common topic that we speak about. And again, thank you so much for having me here today. So if we are to jump into it, if that's okay, Joey, if we can go straight into it.
Yeah, let's get started. Yeah, we're excited. And it is a big need. And one of the things that I like is getting your perspective from outside of the US. So that was one of the reasons I was very excited to bring you on.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think in South Africa, we're quite far away from the American markets. I know Amazon is set to launch early next year in South Africa, which should be very, very interesting. But in South Africa alone, the marketplace scene is very condensed to one or two marketplaces. So it'll be very interesting when Amazon launches. But I guess it's always good to have a little bit of an African perspective of things. But this overall presentation, please, if anyone wants to stop and chat during, please go for it. I know sometimes I hate hearing myself talk for long periods of time. So please, if you want to interrupt, by all means, go for it. But this presentation is dedicated to just showcasing the way we look at brands and the steps that we put in place when assisting brands in going overseas. I think there's a lot of things that people don't really want to think about because they're not as sexy as developing a product and then launching that product. But there's steps before launching that product that you need to think about that are often thought about too late. And if we get into the crux of this presentation, I'm just going to take us through what we define and how we look at if an e-commerce or Amazon seller is ready to start selling their brand overseas, selling their product overseas, what they need to start thinking about when expanding internationally. And then we're going to take a practical example. I see Matt's just joined as a panelist, a practical example on Matt Atkins, one of his one of his brands. He's so kindly given me some information for me to kind of analyze on that. And we're just going to practically talk about the brand's performance in the US, as well as the category performance in the US, and how that relates to the category performance in the UK, and if there actually is scope from that element to take his brand into the UK, and then how exactly to go about doing that. And then we're just going to end it off in showcasing just a little bit about what we can do at Z and how we can possibly add to your arsenal, to your skill set. Jumping straight into it, when we speak about if a seller is ready to expand, there's a couple elements that we like to touch on. Naturally, it is very, very brand specific and it's person dependent as well. But if we have to kind of dumb it down and look at some metrics, generally it helps if the brand is showing consistent revenue over the last 12 months. So it's not a brand that's just launched in their local markets and then immediately looking to jump into an overseas market. We like to see that there is historical performance in the last 12 months, that product is satisfying a level of demand in the US or in whatever local market it may be, so that there is confidence that there's a good chance we'll succeed in that foreign markets. Naturally, international expansion is not cheap. There has to be some level of investment into it, but the return on investment is often fantastic. So it helps to have either very, very decent buckets of net profits that you're able to rely on, or an angel investor, venture capitalist, as well as an e-commerce funding service provider. That always helps. But another thing that they have to be secure in their product offering. You as an Amazon seller have to believe in the product that you're wanting to sell overseas. If you don't believe in it, if you are a little bit shaky, if you're 60% in, it's not going to work. You have to be 100%. You have to be fully committed, and that comes with the capital backing as well. And naturally, a lot of people think that it's the right thing to do to sell globally, to start selling in a foreign market. But you need to have to want to sell globally. You need to want to test your product out in new and foreign markets. Because if you do it just because it's a next step in the process of your business, might not be the best thing for you. And just the metric we like to use from a revenue perspective, this varies. It is no way set in stone. There are instances where someone's doing 100 to 200K in their local markets, and they're able to afford to go into a foreign market. But what we find is around at $1 million and higher or lower mark is a good metric to use to see if you are actually successful in your local market from a revenue perspective, and if you have the funds to make that jump into the foreign markets. Some things that you need to think about when you are expanding your business into foreign markets. The first element is naturally what market works for my product based on consumer buying habits. So which Amazon market do I actually want to sell my product in? We know that the US is naturally the biggest. The second biggest is Germany, followed by the UK. But each of those markets have a certain product category that is more attractive to that consumer base. There's different cultures. There's a lot of different things to think about when entering your product into new markets. You need to understand that market is best for your product. But then you also need to know, once you've chosen that market, what tests, representation, documentation do I have currently for my products in terms of the compliance around it, and what do I need? And then you need to fill that gap. We talk about EPR compliance in Germany, for example. If you're selling electronics, having your CE or CA markings, ensuring that your packaging and your waste product from your product is compliant in terms of WEEE. Those are the type of certifications, compliance elements to your product that you need to be thinking about for them to be legal for imports and for sale in that foreign market. Then you need to understand, how actually do you want to move your goods there? What is best for your product when moving it overseas? Is your import going to be heavy to an FBA center? How fast do you want to get your product there? What are your timelines? You need to understand that air is naturally the fastest form of transportation, but it's also one of the more expensive, and it's better for lighter loads. Sea takes longer, but is better for heavier loads, and it is much cheaper. I'm sure a lot of you are seeing the freight prices these days vary quite dramatically. So making that decision, making it early, is best for your brand. So I would definitely recommend planning in advance for freight and not doing it as a last resort, because then you're going to be paying a lot and your margins are going to be a lot smaller than they should be. The next thing you need to think about when going into foreign markets is, will you use an importer of record, or do you need an importer of record? I guess it's often the question, what is an IOR? IOR is just how we abbreviate it, importer of record, because it's a bit of a mouthful. And will I need it? So an IOR is basically a third party or yourself taking legal responsibility for the import in the foreign country. So if you have a presence in that foreign country, you can be the importer of record. However, there are a lot of countries of import into. If you don't have a physical presence, you don't have directors, you don't have a business premises, you need to have someone else take responsibility for the imports, take responsibility for the payments of the duties and taxes, as well as any audit inquiries, to ensure that that import into that foreign country is compliant. So many people come to us at the last second saying, oh, I'm looking to import into Germany. I didn't know I needed an importer of record, and now my goods are stuck at customs. That is something you need to think about in advance. In some cases, you are able to act as your own importer of record, but you'll still need someone else to help you with the customs clearance. So it's doing your research in terms of, do I need to be an importer of record? Will I need it? And if I will, who is going to act as that importer of record? Once your goods clear customs, you need to think about, firstly, if I'm only selling on Amazon, am I wanting to sell through my web shop as well? Do I want to go through FBA or FBM? And if you want to do FBM, do you have a warehouse that you're currently looking to? Do you have a 3PL that you are going to be working with? And if you have limited stock inventory levels with the Amazon FBA warehouse, do you have a warehouse in that foreign country that will be able to hold stock for you and drip feed Amazon whenever you need it? Those are things that you need to be thinking about. And then naturally, and I guess this often starts at the beginning, having the correct import and tax numbers, or just having the correct for the country that you're storing into. So the general rule of thumb, and it's something that is quite useful, is for every country in the UK and EU, with every country that you are holding stock in, whether it be an Amazon FBA warehouse or a third-party logistics center, you need to have a VAT registration, VAT standing for value-added tax, VAT, as well as in the EU and in the UK, you need to have an EORI number, which just ensures that you have a right to import, you have the correct documentation to import into that country. And generally, you need to look at starting that process earlier rather than later, because VAT registration numbers can take, in some cases, a couple of months to come through. So you don't want to be waiting to import goods. Yes, Joey, I see that you unmuted.
Yeah, a natural question from this is, how do you go about doing that? Like, how would I do that from the US if I wanted to sell and make sure I had the right tax stuff in another country?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different providers that can help in procuring the VAT registration. A lot of people have tried with their local accountants or their in-house tax team to procure the VAT registration number from the country of imports, as well as the EORI number. But it is easier to just work with a service provider, get them to procure the VAT registration number as well as the EORI number for you, and then they will handle the compliance on your behalf. So they will file VAT returns, tax returns on a monthly basis. So I would recommend going through an external service provider. I'm not going to sell Z at this point, but I would recommend using an external service provider and them taking on the hassle that can be dealing with tax authorities.
And you do that, right? Your company does that?
Yes. Okay. We can offer tax registration and filing services in around 40 to 50 countries around the world.
Okay, wonderful. I'll put a link in the chat for those, at this point curious and are thinking that they might want to start that process. So keep talking. I'll pull a link and I'll put it in the chat so that everybody can bookmark the link.
Okay. Fantastic. So naturally, once you have those 6 things sorted out, that is, I want to say 90% of the process done. I think those are the most important things that you need to procure. All those elements give you the right to start trading in that new market. The rest is up to you. The next step in our process, and I guess this is more of the fun part, is the practical example that Matt has thankfully given use of our brand, one of the fantastic coaches at AMZ Insiders. He is the owner of Artisan Smoker and Healthy Meal Preppers. What we've basically done is just used one of our analytics tools to understand how Artisan Smoker and Healthy Meal Preppers are doing from a revenue perspective. How's their growth looking? How's their average selling price looking? And then compare that to the category that they are being sold into. You'll see I'll take us through one of the specific products that we're going to be looking at. Compare that to the UK and see, is there actually opportunity for Matt to take his brand into the UK? So I believe Artisan Smoker has been going for a few years, whereas Healthy Meal Preppers just started. And also Healthy Meal Preppers looks like it's catching up pretty quickly. But I think it's really nice to see the solid revenue growth numbers, if you look at the screen, from an overall perspective. Up nearly 60% from the last year is fantastic figures, as well as the total units sold. And that year-on-year average selling price change shows that it's not a case of having the competition that you need to lowball the competition. You can still grow on that average selling price and continue making profits. And in this case, for our example, I'm going to focus on Artisan Smoker and see, can we get Artisan Smoker to the UK? So Artisan Smoker they basically have 2 of the main flagship products, is the meat injector, as well as the heavy-duty grill gloves for barbecue purposes. And I must say, as a South African, we have, in South Africa, we call barbecue braai. And it's literally a South African tradition. We have a holiday every year called Heritage Day. It's nicknamed Braai Day because we just sit around the braai, braaiing our meats, cooking our meats, having a beer, watching some sport, and just chilling out with family. And I think that's one of my favorite things to do. So in seeing these products, I'm like, I kind of wish Amazon was selling into South Africa already. I mean, naturally, you can kind of drop ship to South Africa, but I would love these kind of products for myself. No bias aside, because naturally I've never actually met Matt in person, although he does seem like a lovely guy. The gloves in this element, if you look at the revenue perspective, and the revenue per ASIN is the best bet for us to have a look at to see, can we get these gloves into the UK? If we understand the current Amazon markets, and it must be known that in the US, there are 3 competitors. The top 3 were removed from this analysis just because they were skewing the data a little bit. And for this example, we are just ensuring that we have a look at the immediate competition around Artisan Smoker and how the category is doing year on year. We can see that, just very briefly, we see a little bit of red. The category has decreased in around 32% in the Amazon USA market, both on the revenue as well as the total units sold perspective. Year on year, the average selling price is down, but it is also fantastic to see that Artisan Smokers year on year market share difference has gone up. And their market share by brand is gone up as well. And if we look at the positioning in the quadrant on the bottom right, you'll see that Artisan Smoker, generally from what our analysis has seen, you want the brand to be as close to the intersection between the average market share as well as the average selling price to know that they are faring pretty decent within that category. Artisan Smoker is really close to that, which does show a really, really good standing in the current market within the US, despite the overall category having decreased year on year. If we look at a little bit more metrics that we like to see, is just kind of showing us how Artisan Smoker, the gloves, are doing in the local US marketplace. We see that they are faring, in this example, second from an ACE and revenue perspective, as well as they are seeing good revenue growth, as well as market share growth, which is imperative. It's generally a well-performing ACE. And if we just look at the segment sales by date, we just see that there's obviously a natural spike in sales around Christmas, and then I think that's Prime Day around July. So it's just having a look at the segment kind of shape and how that's faring. But it's also good to see that when it comes to average selling price, Artisan Smoker don't try and be the cheapest, but they're still performing very, very well year on year, which is a good sign. Then, if we have to look at the UK markets for the product category of heat-resistant gloves, it must be known that these figures are in pounds. For some reason, the analytics tool that I could use kept on showing dollars, even though this is pounds. We do see that there is revenue growth in this category in the UK. We saw in the USA, it was down 30-odd%. It's up nearly 4% in the UK, which is a good sign. It shows that there is a market for this product. And we also see that changing the average selling price from £21 and changing that converting it to dollars, it's around the same price of what Matt is currently selling the gloves for in the USA. And most importantly, there is only one big player in this market. We see that Kim Yuan, I think that's how you pronounce it, takes most of the market share, which is brilliant because it means there's a lot of market share to take away from him or her, whichever the brand owner. I think that is really, really important to note, because if the market share was split very evenly amongst 10 to 20 different brands, entering that market becomes a little bit more difficult. So there is room to take away some of that market share, as well as there looks like there's decent space on that positioning quadrant for Matt to get Artisan Smoker gloves sitting quite nicely around that average mark. If we are looking at some of the average selling prices, then it's actually quite interesting to note that Kim Yuan, the market share leader, looks like they are lowballing the rest of the competition. See, it's dramatically lower selling price, barring, I think it's Kia oven gloves, barring Pulon oven gloves, which is very much the lowest. But if you look at the immediate competition, looks like they are lowballing the competition, which means that there's still space to show quality and price at a decent level. But despite Kim Yuan owning that marketplace, it looks like everyone else is still achieving revenue growth, which is really, really positive to see. And if we look at the segment sales pattern, it's very similar to the USA, just a little bit more jagged, less smooth. So we've analyzed the US and the UK markets. We've looked at the revenue decline in the USA and the revenue growth in the UK, as well as the average selling prices. And it all kind of points to one element. It seems like we can, from this analysis alone, look at getting the barbecue gloves into the UK. There's one major player, which means there's plenty market share to take from that major player for Matt, as well as there's a niche growth year on year, which is very, very vital because you're already entering your product into a growing market. The average selling price is competitive. You want to go into a market where the average selling price is very, very low. You struggle to get into it, and it just hurts your profit margins. The only thing about the gloves, and our compliance team has had a look at them, because they are fireproof gloves, they require a lot of compliance work needed on them, but that is not the end of the world at all. It just requires, and I'm sure Matt's already got a lot of this done, testing, as well as it needs to meet the protective equipment regulations within the UK. Matt, I see you unmuted. Do you want to comment on that very quickly?
Not yet. I just was doing it for when I am ready, but you are right, and that's actually something that we're getting ready to do. Here in North America, I have to get that to be able to sell these gloves in Canada and Mexico. So that's what we're almost done with the testing phase, but then it's good to know that that'll be able to translate that over to Europe as well. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's fantastic to know. I think you're already kind of 3 steps ahead of the process, which is, I think it's good to see that, as well as it shows it it shows through in the current performance in the USA markets. But another thing with this specific product category in the UK is that it needs a UK-based authorized representative to be responsible for the good in the UK. And the last element is that it needs recycled packaging in order to be compliant and sell in the UK compliantly. But all of that aside, that is not a hefty cost. It's just boxes that he needs to tick to ensure that the good is safe and legal to sell in the UK. And all in all, we still think, despite that, it's going to be a yay. We want to get these gloves into the UK. But naturally, you can't only look at that element. You need to see if it's going to be profitable for Artisan Smoker to get the gloves in. And we kind of have a little bit of a breakdown of the costs of going and expanding internationally. We've seen that the market figures show us that we can do it, but now is it worth it for the profits? We look at the fixed cost and the variable cost. The fixed cost is generally your certificates, your testing, your labeling, as well as your representation, all from a product compliance perspective, of which Matt might already have all of that done. Then the other element that you'll need to think about going into the UK is, do you have a VAT registration? Do you have an ERA number? As well as the filings per month that would cost an external service provider to conduct the VAT compliance on Artisan Smoker's behalf. Some other fixed costs that you may be incurring in this expansion is your Amazon account fees, naturally. If you have any agents that you're going to be using, for instance, an authorized representative might have a yearly fee to be that authorized representative, as well as if you're using an agency or some expert to manage your accounts on your behalf, what does that retainer look like on a yearly basis? Then some of the variable costs, obviously your import fees is on a per shipment basis. So your freight, your import compliance, as well as your VAT and duties, depends on the import value of your goods into the UK. So that obviously we also spoke about. If you choose air, if you choose sea, one is dramatically cheaper than the other. But as well as having imports on record, we generally take a fee to act as that legal representative at customs. And naturally,
can you tell me, and I know that there's a lot of variables to it, but can you compare what all of those freight and shipping fees are like compared to US?
Can you maybe explain that a little bit more? I do apologize. My speaker seems to be very
It might
soft.
be me. The microphone on these $200 headphones are not very great, unfortunately. So it might be me. My question is, the duties and shipping and all of that kind of stuff from China, how do all of those fees compare between the UK and the US in terms of the cost of getting product from China?
Yeah, great question. I think the sea lanes from China to US are quite cheap, naturally because it's such a common lane. But if we're going to be using air freights, if I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure because it's going to be very close. I think what we can do is post the call is I can actually physically do a live quote for you. Well, not after the call, maybe tomorrow, do a live quote for you to see exactly how much it would cost. I don't, unfortunately, I'm not going to pretend to have those fees offhand. But I think that's very valuable information, and I'd definitely love to present it along with the presentation to the society after we're done presenting. Is that okay, Matt?
Awesome. Yes, yeah, very much. Thank you.
Fantastic. But the import compliance fee and the VAT and duties is generally the higher the import value. So the more goods you ship, generally the higher that fee will be, because it's often based on a percentage of the import value, as well as the amount of goods and the quantity of the goods that you're sending, which relates to the HS code classification, which relates to the duties applicable in that country. And then some of the other variable costs, which don't really need to go with saying, is the cost of the units, the actual manufacturing cost, as well as how much you're spending on ad spend on a per unit basis. So what I have done is I've just taken a very, very brief calculation into how much it may cost to expand and what it looks like from a unit's perspective to sell in a new market in the UK to break even, and if it will be profitable. We use the average selling price that I got from the data analytics tool that we've been using, as well as estimated a lot of other costs. It must be noted that costs may vary slightly with each scenario, so do not take this as golden. This is just an indicative exercise for practice purposes. But using all of these fees, that I'm not really going to go into too much detail, but the compliance, the agents, and the other fees, that's generally an annual cost. You can use this for your own elements, or if you'd like to reach out to me after the call, you can give me some of those figures, and I will put it into our return on investment calculator, and then I can get you an approximate value. But looking at all of these now, looking at the numbers, to break even, they would basically have to sell 663 units in a year. However, if they sell the same amount as they did last year in the USA, they'd make around $82,000 profits. And with post-VAT accounting, which is an element in the UK that if you sign up with the PVA scheme, you do not have to pay VAT on imports. If they take advantage of the PVA scheme, you make an extra $8,000 a year profits. But naturally, I think we understand that not every market is the USA market, so you're not going to be selling the same amounts. Realistically, you aren't. So if we have to say 50% less revenue, we're still making a decent profit in around $40,000 or so, give or take. So looking at this, looking at the profitability numbers, it's still a yes from us. So just to summarize what to look for when you're going into the UK, very, very quickly, because we've basically touched on them already, is what does the brand competition look like in the foreign markets? Is there a space for me to enter my product into that market based off how the current the competitive landscape looks? Is there a low barrier to entry? Comes in with the brand competition as well as the average selling price. Is there year-on-year revenue growth within this product category? Is there a more profitable average selling price that works with my current profitability figures and my return on investment calculator? What are the in-country compliance laws to know that I need these before I get into that market? I need this test done. I need this representative. What does that look like? As well as what is the VAT and GST regulations? Do I need a VAT registration? How long is that VAT registration going to take? Plan in advance. If a VAT registration is going to take 3 months, start the process early. So we've done a lot. The next step is what's next? I want to go to the UK. We've analyzed the category. We've analyzed the profitability. We've analyzed the compliance laws needed. Now, what else do I need to do when going into that market? Well, first things first, you need to open your Amazon accounts. I think that goes without saying. And often in the UK, for example, you need to show a proof of history in order to get your VAT registration. So having a test shipment going through to the UK is very, very vital to fast track that VAT registration and get that done in the UK. Then obviously you need your VAT registration and your EORI number. That is needed regardless. Then you need to ensure that you're compliant on a monthly basis by having someone or having your internal accounting team do your VAT filing, as well as filling out the documentation in the correct way to ensure that you are able to reclaim your import VAT on entry. Import VAT is payable on a per shipment basis. Signing up for the PVA scheme in the UK allows you to defer that import VAT, which is, I think, non-negotiable. But then you also have to ensure that your product compliance is done right. It seems like Matt's already ticked that box, but for all the other sellers, you need to ensure that your products really, really, really fit within the market laws in the UK. Then naturally, you need to think about the best way to get your products into the UK. Are you going to go sea? Are you going to go air freight? Are you going courier or freight forwarder? What is the weight of your products? Naturally, you're going to have a little bit of trouble if you want to go road freight from the US to the UK, but maybe one day. And then once the goods get to that country, you need to ensure that you ensure smooth customs clearance and imports of record is used correctly to ensure a first-time customs clearance. There's nothing worse than getting your goods stuck at customs and you don't know why. Work with a professional to get you through that process. your freight forwarder isn't always the best person to do this. Naturally, you want to decide, are you doing FBA or FBM? Are you only selling on Amazon? Are you selling off Amazon as well? What does that fulfillment model look like? And then naturally, you've done all of that, but you need to drive traffic to your store or to your product on Amazon. I'm sure Joey and Jamie are very, very good at PPC with off Amazon advertising, or as well as on Amazon advertising. Sorry, it's been a long day of talking. But all of those elements you really need to think about when going to the UK. And then finally, international expansion is the name of our game at Z. It's our bread and butter. We've been doing it for 10 years. It's tedious, it's tiresome, and it's admin heavy. Let us do it for you so that you can focus on more than interesting parts of your business. But in a very quick diagram, this is what we can do. We can get your goods from warehouse to warehouse. We'll organize the freight or courier for you. We will get your VAT registration as well as your DST registration in Australia and Canada, in the UAE. We will get that done for you, and we will ensure that we communicate with the tax authority on your behalf and make sure that you are compliant on a monthly basis. We will clear the goods at customs for you, and we'll also act as your imports are record. We will ensure that your products are compliant on a monthly basis. We have an expert team of attorneys whose sole job at Z is to research the products our clients are selling and ensure that they meet all the criteria for selling their goods legally into that new country. Our technology classifies the HS codes for you so that you can accurately identify the duties and taxes that are going to be payable on imports, so that that landed cost, if you don't estimate it correctly, then there's a good chance you may have budgeted for a certain amount, but when the goods get at customs, you're like, oh no, there's actually a lot more to pay. As well as filling out your documentation in a way that you can reclaim your import VAT, as well as helping you defer your VAT so you don't have to pay VAT in the first place. And then lastly, I have to chuck this in because I'm a partnership manager at heart. We have a fantastic network of partners that if you become a Z client, you get access to yourself. I'm sure Joey and Jamie have an insane network themselves. But I mean, you can work together, and I'm sure between the two of us, you'll have something for anything that you need.
Yes, we're always about, there's room for all of us at the table. So if it's trusted partnerships, we want to know all about it.
Yes, 100%. But if you aren't already tired of hearing me talk today, I'd love to continue the conversation. Either you can have a listen to our podcast. I'd love you guys to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Easy E-commerce Podcast. I'm sure we're going to get Joey or Jamie on there pretty soon. As well as you can obviously find me on LinkedIn. I generally respond pretty quickly, or you can just pop me a mail at bryce@z.co. And again, thank you to Joey and Jamie, as well as Matt. You guys are all doing an absolutely fantastic job. I loved hearing about what you guys are doing, and I can't wait to see what you guys do in the future. And I'd just love to say how lucky this group is, having 2-3 experts who've done it already, are currently doing it, guiding you guys off the back of their success. But Joey, Jamie, thank you for giving me the chance to chat to the AMZ Insider Society today. And hopefully I can do it again sometime soon.
Yes, this is awesome. And sometimes it's a difficult topic to talk about because people aren't sure, maybe when they launch to sell on Amazon in the US, what the right steps are to launch in another country. And I will admit, when I first started selling on Amazon, I thought, oh, you just click another marketplace and you open up and you just sell over there. And it's a little bit more intricate. So it's so nice to bring you on and have a partner like you to help walk us through all of it. And I also want to say, like, hats off to you, Matt, for letting us dig into your brand and opening up. That's really cool. I'm also envious that my past brand, I didn't get to have you analyze it. I was like, ooh, I really could have used this a year and a half ago. What'd you think, Matt?
It's fascinating to me because, I mean, so first of all, you saw those revenue numbers for this last year and the year before, and you saw those ups and downs and spikes. I've had massive inventory issues like most sellers have in the past couple of years. And we haven't even realized, not even a speck of the success that I know that is possible for us in the US market. So knowing, we're really, really close to we're actually set up for Q4. I was very surprised that Q4 is big for the barbecue category. Last year kind of put us in a weird spot because of that. I wasn't quite prepared for it. But now that we are, and we've been through a full cycle of the barbecue category in the US, I mean, my revenue should be double what it is right now here in the US, and if it weren't for inventory issues. And everybody listening, if you don't know Jamie's top 3 rules of selling on Amazon, I've broken all 3 of them this year and last year multiple times. Jamie, Joey, what are his rules again?
Number 1 is don't run out of stock. Number 2, don't run out of stock. And number 3, don't run out of stock.
Yeah, done that a lot. And then you actually see what the result of that is, everyone watching. So again, I mean, this year was different. It was an anomaly for lots of people because of the supply chain and all of those things. But for me, knowing that we're in a better position in terms of inventory, we've got some funding now. Like this presentation has opened up my eyes that this is a legitimate opportunity for us. And it's something that I've been kind of head down trying to fix the US, but knowing that on the other side of that, which we're very close to, there's an opportunity and we've already have the foundation laid, like Bryce was showing here. It's really just a matter of getting that taken care of and getting some certifications. But other than that, we're ready. We're ready to make that move. Even though the revenue from the analysis isn't quite there, I know that the opportunity is because of kind of where we are from a business. So Bryce, I super appreciate this. I loved kind of opening up and looking to see what the possibilities are. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
No, honestly, the pleasure is all mine. I thoroughly enjoyed analyzing your brand, and I'm not lying when I say I'm really considering purchasing one of your products, even though may have to pay some extra for shipping.
I'm gonna send you one. I'm gonna send you a pair of gloves and a meat injector, so expect those. We'll work that out.
Oh, that would be amazing. Honestly, that would be fantastic. No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and honestly, if you say that this is how you're performing with some stock outs occurrences, then I can't wait to do this analysis again next year and see the change.
Yeah, love it.
That is awesome. All right, so we're going to start to wrap it up. We're just closing up the lunch hour in the US. So in the chat, if you're on Zoom or even on the other platforms I'm watching on here streaming, if you can say what you thought about Bryce, and if you have any last questions. I do have one question came in saying around how much should you be making to start considering going global? Like, is there like a low dollar amount, like, as soon as you hit 6 figures, or what do you usually advise people?
So I spoke elements about it at the start. We use the metric of in and around $1 million a year revenue figures, but it is honestly dependent on the capital backing that a seller has, as well as the confidence in the product. But we've seen anywhere between 500 to $1 million, and then we work with sellers who do 100 million plus. So honestly, I wouldn't recommend it if you're just starting in your local market. You're like, I want to start my brand right now from scratch and launch on multiple markets at once. I wouldn't recommend that. But genuinely, if you're confident in your brand, I mean, revenue-wise, I'm always very hesitant to say, but upwards of that 500K mark is a decent level to start.
Bryce, I have one more quick question in terms of advertising. Is there kind of an overarching number that you can give me about the difference between cost per clicks between the UK and the US? Or I know it's dependent on category, but overall, can you kind of give me an idea of what the differences are in cost per clicks in this category, or any just overall?
Matt, I wish I could. Unfortunately, I don't pretend to be an expert in the PPC cost per click side on Amazon. I don't think I'm the best person to answer that question. But the beauty of my partner network is I'm sure I can get an answer for you if on a later stage.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm seriously considering this. Like, you've opened up my eyes to the possibilities. So it's definitely a conversation that I'll be having with my partners here very soon. So it was an honor to have my brand highlighted in this way, so I can kind of see what it's like.
Brilliant. Well,
Yeah.
you know who to talk to
do.
if you need some help doing that.
I do.
Yes, awesome. All right, for everybody watching, I just put the link again to Z to connect with Bryce in the chat, and keep this. You can bookmark it too for when you're ready and always come back. And this training will be in your membership area for those who are members. You can log in and watch this training as many times as you like. And we'll have the contact info in there as well to reach out to Bryce. Well, Bryce, it was so awesome to have you on. And again, Matt, I just think you're a rock star for letting us dig into your brand. It was really insightful. I love seeing the live demo. And so, yeah, we'll have to have you back and see how Matt's doing in a year, because now you got a lot of pressure on you.
Let's bookmark it. I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's do it every year, Matt.
I'm in.
Awesome. Okay, well, couple comments in the chat. Ben says, thanks guys. Good luck, Matt. Yep. We're all rooting for you, Matt. Chad, is always great info. Thank you. Andrew says, welcome. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bryce. We really appreciate this.
No, it's the pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Joey, for having me, and excited to do it again.
Great. All right. Have a great day, everybody, and good night, Bryce.
Thanks again,
I'm sure
Bryce.
it's late there.
Good night. Thanks so much, guys.